Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The SparkFile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, your twice weekly dose of creative inspiration.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, and we do have answers.
We do. A Spark File is the place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations. And if you're like us and you're making stuff all the time, you know the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry. We're here to refill it.
We are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark our creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or a piece of pottery.
Or an album that chronicles a chapter of your life in music.
Or a Tony Award-winning stage performance.
Or a great big whole life, including a family, a home, a community of artists, and tons of creativity that is built on internal intuition instead of external expectations.
On today's Makersode, we're going to talk to someone who truly sparks us.
And that someone is Karen Olivo. Karen, welcome to the Spark File.
Yeah, what's up?
Hi, Karen. Yes, there's the understatement. That Karen Olivo signature understatement that I love. Karen, we're so happy that you're joining us today. I have wanted to have this conversation with you literally for years, and I'm so thrilled it's happening. Before we dive in, it's time for the Spark File price of admission. Real quick, can you tell us a creative risk that you have taken recently?
Well, I'm not really sure when this is going to air, but by the time this airs, probably that risk will have just been taken, which I'm vowing to no longer work with any organization that would knowingly fund hate or inequality. So that's across the board. In any capacity whatsoever. And for me to work for any of those organizations, I'll need to see some form of equality audit, some form of receipt.
Oh, equality control. I like that.
Yeah, so
that is unbelievable. I have like a thrill running through my body. And when you said that, my mouth like popped open and no sounds could come out. That's amazing. That's fantastic. That's some action.
Yeah. It's kind of the only thing you can do, right?
Yeah.
I fucking love that.
You know, as a maker, the thing that I have to give is my art. And so if I withhold it, then hopefully we can force people to really enact change. also, the money, it's like the money is going into places that we need to be able to track at this point. So I'm not going to make you millions of dollars on a Broadway stage so that you can then funnel it into an organization that means to do me harm in the end. Truthfully.
Yeah.
That's right.
God damn.
Yes.
That's fucking awesome.
I'd say you're officially admitted into the Spark File.
Fuck. Yes.
Karen.
Sweet.
You're in. You're totally in.
That was easy.
Well, that was honestly one of the more, I think that's completely unique as far as creative risks that we've heard from people. I hope more people start answering that question with that.
That's a big, bold, creative
big one.
risk. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. So good.
So, as we know, these are complex times, to say the least, and we're all experiencing a lot of rapid change. So let's start with this little 3-part question. Where are you right now? How are you right now? And in this rapidly changing world, what's top of mind for you today?
Yeah. So I guess top of mind is this vow and this initiative that I'm sort of taking on, because it impacts my team, the people that make their money from me. Meaning my manager and my agent and publicist and people of that nature. That being said, where I am currently physically, I'm sitting in my basement studio at my desk, where I teach and where I make art. I'm also a visual artist, so that this is also a place where that stuff happens. And how am I? I'm actually feeling very inspired today, which is different from most days where I feel like the train has left the station and I need to figure out a way of getting to my destination on my own. But that's it.
So, Karen, for people who are just meeting you for the first time, this is a 2-part question. Part 1, creatively speaking, when people ask you, what do? How do you answer? I feel like you're the kind of person that really does contain creative multitudes. So how do you answer that question?
So I usually say that I'm an artist in different capacities, and a teacher. Because I've written for theater. There are times that I've made physical pieces of art for people, custom pieces of art. Sometimes I act as a bit of a sounding board for other artists. And then the other bigger part of me being an artist is that I teach baby artists to be big artists.
I love it. I love it. And are you doing a bunch of teaching now in this virtual age? Who are you teaching and what are you teaching them and what can you teach us?
Yeah.
I'm actually starting a summer school course tomorrow with the Madison School District. I'm teaching. I've entitled it Art Appreciation, but truthfully, what it is, to reflect the times, I'm going back and using musical theater pieces of art to explain racism. And to, it's a predominantly white area where I live. There are not a lot of minorities. And so it's sort of, I'm tiptoeing into the world of basically song interpretation and empathy, because there's a lot of components of empathy that, actors are like the OG, like we basically branded empathy. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And so for these kids to really get inside some of these characters, they have to see it from a very different perspective, which they probably have not been exposed to. So we're working on, I think it's a 5-week course, 4-week course. And I'm teaching.
That's fantastic. And will you be assigning them things, or will you be asking them to select material that is somehow, like, how specifically will you be expanding their empathy with this curriculum?
So I usually work, there's a technique that I use, which is an Eric Morris technique. He's an acting teacher that was based out of LA, like in the 70s. He uses a lot of personalization and being states. So it's basically using what you know in life and experiences that you have to bring to characters. And so I've chosen a handful of things from musicals that talk about racism. So I'm using some pieces from Fiddler, and I'm using some pieces from South Pacific, because those are the two more classical pieces that these kids will probably have known. Most kids have done like Fiddler Junior, Fiddler, South Pacific, the junior version at some point. And so I want it to be something that they've already experienced. And then I'm sort of assigning key parts.
And so using it sort of as a point of entry, like a familiar, maybe comfortable point of entry to get into some more challenging expansion.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fiddler's a wonderful show because it talks about the family unit. We all have a family, whether or not we like them, that's another thing. But it talks about traditions of different families. And so we're going to sort of use the template of what they are doing and their struggles, and have kids sort of look at the similarities and the differences, and then try to approach it from a place of them using their own life experience of what it means to be in a family, and to need the approval of your father, and to also follow your heart and your own individuality, and then sort of funneling that into the framework that discusses racism. Is that too much for high school students? I just said that out loud and I'm like, is that too much?
I think you're right on time. And as I listen to you speak, something I've known about you for a long time and enjoyed very much is that you have the heart of an artist and you have the heart of a teacher. My God, do you have the heart of a teacher, which I love. Wait, there was two parts to that question I was asking you. So part one, we covered. What creative work are you most well known for?
I would say that I'm most well known for winning the Tony Award for West Side Story, the revival. I don't know. It's hard for me to say what I think I'm most well known for.
You've done so many creative things.
Yeah.
But I guess
that's a trick. That's a trick question, because there's no way for me to, because I'm inside. I know what people tell me.
You're right.
You're
right. That's right. It's a trick question. That's the kind of hard-hitting journalism, that gotcha journalism that I'm famous for. But I can imagine you're not our only guest that we've talked to who has this, where I bet when people approach you, it's anybody's guess what's going to come out of their mouth when they say, oh my God, Karen, you don't know me, but I loved you in fill in the blank. Like, I bet there's a lot of things that, and it's just dealer's choice what's going to come out.
That is true. I've gotten a lot of, weren't you the girl on Law and Order whose kid got sick?
Yes.
Right. And the last couple of weeks, actually, I should say, every time I would go before, the pandemic, every time I would go to the airport and I would go to Florida, I would get stopped in the airport by elderly people, and they would say, oh my God, you're the lawyer from Harry's Law, because they all love Harry's Law.
Yes.
I was on a show with Kathy Bates.
Everybody
loves Kathy Bates.
Yes.
So I would always get that. But just more recently, I've had a lot of students come up to me and say, you taught me at XYZ. And I'm like, cool. That's awesome.
I love that.
That's got to feel really good.
Yeah, because I didn't screw them up, because if they're coming back to say hi.
They're not walking up to you and just like confronting you or smacking your face.
Right.
That has got to feel good.
So, Karen, one of the many things we admire in you is your decision to forge your own creative career and life path. Wow, look at this journalism. I'm going to quote another journalist. In 2018, an interview in the Ledger, you said, I kind of broke the mold of what an artist is supposed to do to have a successful career. And that ended up being the right move for me. I don't have to be incredibly rich. I don't have to be on everyone's TV all the time. I don't have to be a name everyone knows. I just have to make good art. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about what and how you decided to make a change and what that looked like?
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of things about commerce and art that did not make sense to me from a very young age. And when I started becoming a maker of art in all of these different capacities, I realized that when I would get paid, things got weird. Mm-hmm. And so
That's so fucking interesting.
The things that sort of pushed me away from, I guess, doing the thing that I saw everyone else doing was that I've always operated from this gut instinct. You know, my stomach usually tells me when something feels right, or when I'm about to be in flow. And so being really young and not having a lot of training, I learned to sort of guide myself through that. And so as I got further into my career, I started noticing that I was feeling out of flow more than I was feeling in flow. And usually it involved when I would start doing work that there was more money involved. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to stop making art, but I need to sort of figure out what it is about this that does not gel with me as a person. And so I pulled away and I moved, off the coast. I had been bi-coastal before, and I started looking at the components of Karen that without her resume and without her career, those things that I'd sort of overlooked. And I sort of filled my own sort of my artistic well was filled with just living life and being a human being on this earth.
Yes.
And then when I decided to go back, I waited for a tug in my stomach. I waited for that feeling of, you have to make art now. You have something to say. Yeah. And then I try to operate in that sort of vein of listening to my stomach, always knowing that if I decided to pull away for any reason because it felt unsafe or it felt like I was not being true to my art, that I would still sort of exist and I would be fine. Because that's the thing that most artists probably want to operate from their gut. That's anyway. Right. They want to be organic, but that money keeps getting. Yes,
but the money, and then that's going to help me. Like, that's going to help me figure out who I am later. But first, I need to have that pile of money. Yeah. I'm so curious to know. Like, do you remember who even or how you learned? Who taught you what flow was, or how to identify? Like, oh, this is the preferred state of being. Because I just think it took such bravery and boldness to say, I'm going to go take myself and figure this out. Did anyone sort of lead that charge, support you? Was there someone whose life course you were like, I'm going to emulate that? I don't know. I'm just so curious because I think it takes so much to just decide that you're going to do that.
I would say that my dad was a very big influence on me very young. He's a visual artist and works in lots of different mediums. But one of the things that I noticed as a child was that when he would work, he would kind of go into like this trance-like state. He would sort of like, you'd be talking to him and he just couldn't hear you. And then knowing as a child, watching him work and the things that he could come up with, I learned pretty young, like, if I say his name twice and he's not listening, I got to wait because he's making something really special.
God bless.
So that and then, I was not a visual art. I always had like art lessons because he would give them to me for free. But when I decided to be a performer, there were a handful of times that I would feel this thing, it feels like, it almost feels like a spiritual experience where you're like someone puts on a Karen suit. Like I sort of vacate my body and something else is operating the arms and the legs and making the choices. And I would be able to have this sort of out of body experience where I would notice that I was performing, but I had nothing to do with it and how incredible that was. And then I would kind of get yanked back in. And then I was like, oh, that must be fucking flow. Cause I've heard people talk about that where you're just like, you're going with it. You're not manifesting anything in the sense that you're not manipulating a moment. You're not manipulating the art to go into any direction. You're sort of allowing it to do what it does.
That's fucking amazing. I'm just sitting here and listening to you and thinking how, I don't want to over romanticize it, but how amazing to have a parent who is modeling something like that. I'm so glad you asked that question, Laura, because I don't think I even knew or had any exposure to anything like that until I don't know, I was 40 or so. Like, I really don't know if that's so fucking fascinating.
Yeah, I think that you could identify this is that trance like state that my dad was in. I don't know. I'm amazed by that because I didn't have that either. It took a long time to figure out what it was, and probably like through college, people talking about it, and then eventually me experiencing it. I'm like, oh, that's what they were talking about, but not so much witnessing it in anyone else.
It also reminds me of something. You and I were having a conversation, Karen, where you were talking about sometimes if say you're starring in a Broadway show and there's a lot, like you're getting your costume changed, you're getting your wig changed, and it's like, that's a lot of people touching me kind of feeling. But when you said that, I was like, oh, I think that might be your introversion talking. But now that you say what you just said, I think it might be you're in a flow state, ideally, and all of that could feel disruptive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there's also like this thing, you know, when you're doing a Broadway show, because there's so much repetition, you understand your existence almost in a meter, you know, because, you know, in musicals, costume changes are timed. There's only a certain amount there's only a handful of bars of music that you have for the scene change. So everything is almost, there's a metronome happening at all times. And so a lot of times people talking or people tugging can literally yank you out of your time. And so I try to be really sensitive to that, because once you lose it, you end up spending the rest of the performance trying to get back on track, and therefore you cannot be in flow.
Yes.
You can't. I really feel like the muse won't come if she sees that you're in distress. Like, you have to be open and prepared and like eyes wide open and sort of like, come on, I'm here. But if you're running all over the place and you're not focused, she's like,
I'll swing back around when you're ready.
I'm leave you to it.
It's about time. I'll come back.
Do you feel like you can consistently access that?
I wouldn't say that I'm always striving for it, but I do know I know so little about it, in the sense that I don't know how to truly manifest it, but I do know the things that will take me away from getting there. So there are roadblocks that I've experienced in the past over and over again. Just negative programming, or even a specific person's energy, a routine that is not good for mental health right before I decide to make art. And so I've been able to eliminate those over time. But as far as like being able to like flip a switch, I think that's the great thing about being an artist, is that you really have to sort of be open and primed for that other thing to show up. It's ephemeral. It's not.
But it sounds like
it's not.
It sounds like you've like done your best to learn over time, like lots and lots of learning over time about what works for you to set that stage. Whether it's you're going to do time in your art studio, or you're going to go be the lead in a Broadway show and carry that on your shoulders. That you've worked to kind of learn how to set the stage as best as possible to invite that flow in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that there's also, you know, anyone who's really good at what they do or they make, it takes hours and hours of figuring out not just like the practical aspects of what it is that you're trying to create. Like in my, like the practicing of, you know, the vocal warm-ups to make sure that my voice is pliable, or stamina. Like those are like the components that everyone is going to have to work on. But there's a much more personal level to making art, that if you don't know yourself in that vein, that it doesn't matter how long you spend in the practice room or how hard you work at doing something that's very technical, you won't be able to reach success because you haven't sort of made that connection to the other, you know, that sort of spiritual realm that I think we usually work in. And so there's just hours and hours of me doing the wrong thing, I guess, spiritually, that that keeps the art in this really stagnant
So
and mediocre
when you're
place.
at peak flow, what are some of the things that you like? How are you structuring your life? What practices are you putting, like, consistently implementing to get you there?
I work a lot on repetition. So and it's partly because of the work that I do. So my day has a little bit of repetition, and I don't try to, also because I'm an empath, I try not to come in contact with too many people before I hit the stage. Because I get
You'll sponge
traces
it up.
of those
Oh,
people, and I
gosh.
sort of I drag them around the rest of the day, and that's like not great. For a while, it's really funny. This is so weird, but I started watching the Outlander.
Yeah, tell us more.
Yes.
And I was basically watching it because I was trying to give myself some sort of like break from watching the news. And while I was doing the show, I was watching it, and I would notice that I would get to the theater and I would be speaking in a little bit of an accent.
The Scottish lilt a little bit?
Yeah.
Like British,
the English, yeah. And luckily in the show, I speak in a heightened sort of accent. So it sort of, I think for most people, it looked like I was getting ready to go on stage. But I noticed that it was one of the things that I had to actually remove from my routine before. I could watch it after the show, but I couldn't watch it before.
That's interesting.
Is fascinating.
So repetitive practices work for you, which reminds me of what you're talking about, like that metronome, that rhythm of that, and also knowing what's going to work and knowing what you're going to have to enjoy later. So you can get a full night's sleep and it can burn off, and then you can start a fresh day.
Yeah.
Oh, Outlander. One of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you for like 7 years is that in deciding to structure your life and your career and your creativity in a way that was really attuned with your intuition, I believe that you shine a light for others to follow no matter what their form of creativity is. And I feel like that light is made up of multiple parts, but one is that it's okay to change your choice. You don't have to continue to follow a path because of a choice you made as a younger person. And that really, it is okay to take what you've learned and build new choices that suit the person you are now. And also that you don't have to follow the path that others have consistently taken. You can really get quiet and determine what works for you and what doesn't work for you and follow your own North Star. It's one of the reasons I was was it in 2013 when you were like, I'm choosing something different? Like, I've had all of the success. I've been lauded and awarded for that. And I'm going to choose something different. I don't even think you knew like how much that would seize people's imaginations when you did that. Like, people really got super interested in that choice. And I think it's because it was shining the light on a different possibility that had not even occurred to people before.
Yeah. I mean, I think in our industry, it made a bit of a splash, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's years and years, because I wasn't a trained actor before or a performer. A lot of my stuff, a lot of the things that I did were, like I said before, intuitive. I think that it's hard to say. I don't want to say like I hit the pause button, because then that means that I'm not sort of moving. And I felt like I started moving at a rapid rate. Once I decided to take the blockage away, but for me, it feels like my relationship to what I do in being a creator is like all relationships in which you look at that person and you decide whether or not this is working today, and after year 1 and after year 5, you have to keep checking in and acknowledging that you're changing and how does this best fit me and how can we keep moving forward. And then along the lines of like just being a teacher, you know, the one thing that when I teach young kids to do what I do, what they really forget a lot of the times is that their uniqueness and the way that their perspective of the world is the thing that is going to make them successful, because they only have it. That's no one else can touch it.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it sort of makes sense that I would go with something that was fitting to me and me alone, because that's kind of what I teach kids.
Yeah,
so.
that makes sense.
You know, it's just striking me right now, like, as I listen to you talk, you have such a confidence and an ownership of the word artist. And when you say you are an artist, everything about that feels authentic. And I just wonder, like, I'm projecting myself onto this, I admit, but when you made that choice, I do wonder if other people were like, I can't, like, leaving the city or leaving this, whatever, this ladder I'm climbing, this industry, the way I thought it was supposed to be, would that mean I'm not an artist? Like, if I step out of this, am I still an artist? And it doesn't strike me that question even entered your mind, which is so inspiring.
Well, I think it has to do with the fact that I'm definitely, like, my dad being an artist and being a person of color as an artist when he was coming into making art professionally. One of the things that I was always hyper aware from his perspective was the socialization of what artists are. You know, the framework of commerce and art doesn't work unless those signing the checks put you in a category and keep you there and show you that you can only be what they tell you you can be. And for my parent, I saw a different way of doing it because he was told always that he couldn't. So he wasn't even invited to the table. So the only way for him to make art in the way that most artists have to, because it's habitual and it's, you know, instinctive, was to forget the framework in its entirety and to exist outside of the framework.
That just gave me chills.
Yeah, that's you. And the thing that strikes me about all of this is it seems like you made this decision to just, I'm restating in a different way what you have been stating, but that you made a decision to just keep moving towards the things that actually, in your gut, lifted you up, that you were genuinely curious about, that brought you joy, that you intuited could bring you real creative gratification. And I feel like you're moving to Madison, moving towards love, moving towards a home and a family and space to have an art studio and things like that. It all feels in attunement with that.
Yeah, I mean, I should also state that, I mean, I'd read something somewhere about like some of the great painters, like Picasso, and like about how they would go through these periods of just unplugging on their own. Like they'd paint, you know, their blue period, and then they'd go and they'd get drunk for like 2 years in a chateau somewhere.
Roam around drunkenly.
Do you know what I mean? Like they did this because they knew that the output had to be sort of replenished.
Yes.
And I love the idea of ease and sort of the ownership of this sort of, this is my vessel and I can't run it into the ground. And
I can't just keep pouring out and out and out and out. And this is exactly what it looks like from the outside. It may feel different from the inside, but from the outside, it looks like you have this life where you have great community, great family, great replenishment. And then when things really move you, you'll be like, yeah, I'll go to Chicago and, you know, play a principal role in Hamilton. Yeah, I'll go star in a Broadway show and carry that on my shoulders. But from a place of real replenishment.
Yeah.
Pretty fucking smart.
I want to ask a question about this moment we're in right now. It feels like so many people, Susan and I included, are really trying to look at the future. How will it take shape? How can we help to imagine how it should take shape and move towards that, like proactively?
Mm-hmm.
We're curious to know, like, how is this time and this place in the world that we're living in right now impacting your creativity?
Well, it's interesting. I've had many conversations with some of my mentors in the last couple of weeks since, the riots have begun, and a lot of, doing a lot of research and reading of my own, reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and like really sort of doing some deep dives on Jane Elliott. And what I realized was that there was a part of me, I work in a very commercial level of the art industry. I don't do a lot of fringe work, not because I don't want to, but because I work so infrequently. I kind of have
to make it count.
It really do. But one of the things that I was sort of noticing is that I was operating in this, let's say, I used the word before, but I guess it's the best word, a socialized place. Like I'd been told that I could do so many things, and I'm so used to being the token person in the room that it become normalized for me. And so a lot of my conversations with some of my mentors involve me taking this perspective of, I should have been a better ally. And being a two-time, marginalized person myself, a woman and a woman of color, you would think that I would immediately sort of like sit on the other side and be like, how can you still be doing this to us? But I really did take another position, and in doing so, my mentor was like, you're acting like you're a white person in this industry, and you're not. And it blew my mind that I was like, oh wait, you're right. Like I'm also part of, I'm a part of the problem, but I'm also being marginalized. And so this time has sort of proved to me that if I don't do more education of of the obvious issues, but education involving what actually happened to me over these 20 plus odd years, and I don't identify these key moments in which I wasn't a good ally, or I was marginalized and I brushed it off because that's just the business, that I would never really be able to be an active part of the movement. I wouldn't be able to truly put all of my focus into this. And so for whoever it is that's listening, I think that there's two things, right? So there's like the obvious education of the system that we're operating within. And then what is your part specifically? And then creating for yourself a group of people that will be able to hold you accountable, which is, that has actually been very difficult. There are plenty of people who want to hold me accountable, but just like really understanding what I need to ask them for.
Yeah.
Because have I done that?
Well, just wondering, have you figured it out at all, or have any insight on that? Like for those of us who are thinking right now, I need an accountability group.
Well, usually it's someone who is probably not an African-American person right now, because they're dealing with something that is, it's truly hard for me to, I don't have the capacity to understand that. Sometimes it's another partially marginalized person, whether it be because of gender or, another person of color or another person who's dealt with,
So almost like an affinity group of discussion partners.
Somebody who's got the bandwidth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're asking them to like call you out on things, to challenge you, to learn more? What are you asking of them specifically?
A little
If you
bit of
know
all
yet.
of that. Yeah, a little bit of all of that. So like share with me your resources. When I do interact with you, hold me to these standards, these new standards that we're learning about. From now on, when you feel microaggressions, I'm the person that you can talk to, and vice versa.
Wow.
Right.
If you're not sure, that's the other thing, about people who have been marginalized. Sometimes it's so normalized that something happens and you can't really you're like, that didn't feel right, but you can't focus on it because you're just so used to it. So being able to have a safe person that you can go to and say, hey, this is what happened. Is that what I think it is? Really just creating community that talk about race and inequality regularly, because we obviously haven't been doing that enough. And I know it's dark and it can sometimes almost seem negative to some people. But when I think about, the people in my life who are suffering because of the state of our world, I think, well, that's the least that I can do, is sit in this uncomfortability.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different definitions of creativity, but the one that we sort of use is applied imagination that fights for the powers of good. And what you're talking about creating really, if the question is, how is this time impacting your creativity? What an amazing piece of creativity that is, to set about creating sort of a discussion group, an affinity group, an accountability group, so that the conversation and that work can be ongoing. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah, that's incredible.
I love that. So, Karen, we're obsessed with this scholar researcher named Meta Wagner, and we're obsessed with her 5 creative types. We all contain a blend of the following, but we're curious which you would say best describes your creative driver. So here they are. The A-lister. You live to make an audience laugh or cry, and you love applause and adoration. The artisan. You become so immersed in your creative work, you lose all track of time and space, kind of like you were describing with your dad. The game changer. You thrive on breaking boundaries and crashing conventions. The sensitive soul. You need to express yourself and you hope your art will help others. And the activist. You have a fiery desire to right wrongs and change the world with your art. Do any of those jump out at you as your creative driver?
I was going to go, definitely no for the first one.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
I actually wrote nope. Nope. You said it.
No, thank you.
The artisan, I have an issue. I don't know if it's a clinical issue, but I do not understand time the way that I would assume normal people do. I struggle with it all the time, but I don't think that is. I don't think that would be it. I want to go with probably the activist, because I have a friend who one time we were in the middle of some sort of debate involving, our union or something. And she was like, you're like, would you call me Norma Ray?
Great.
Wow.
We're going to need you. We're going to need you, Norma Ray.
That's right.
That's great.
Karen, another topic that we're obsessed with on this podcast is processing creative failure or perceived failure. We're wondering if you would be willing to share one of your perceived failures or challenges that you've faced and how you processed through it.
Yeah. So, one of my biggest, I would say, professional failures would probably be, or what I perceive to be, would be the Carnegie Hall concert that I was a part of. There was there were 3
I don't
of
know
us.
about this.
Yeah,
there were 3 of us
happened?
that we were asked to recreate Judy Garland's famed concert.
Oh my God.
I knew within I had a year to prepare for it. And I was, playing Carnegie Hall is a big deal for pretty much anyone, right?
Yeah.
And so I also struggle in those settings, like concert settings, because I'm someone who needs story, and I'm also someone who
Oh my
needs,
God, yes. Oh my God, yes.
I need something. I need someone to play off of, and an orchestra
Yes.
behind you is not that thing.
Do not understand how people excel in those formats, and some people really do.
Some do, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, I prepared for a year to do it. And then when I took this stage, I realized that the entire time that I had been working, I'd been operating from, I'd been acting as if I was prepared to do it. And I'd been acting as if I felt like I deserved it. I deserved the opportunity to be on Carnegie Hall stage. And
did this come to you like in a moment, this realization?
Oh, yeah. It was when I opened my mouth to sing the very first note. I felt,
No.
Jesus Christ.
yeah, I felt the floor sort of drop out from underneath me. And I felt like I was like 10 years old.
Oh my God.
My God.
And so that entire evening was one of the most horrifying experiences of my life, because I was unable to really stay in the moment, because the only thing I could hear was my heart beating and this sort of like this overwhelming sense of you're a fraud, you shouldn't even be here. Look at, like, showing me what I was doing incorrectly moment to moment.
Oh God, while you're doing it. Oh,
Yeah, while I was doing it.
it.
And I guess the big takeaway from that, what I feel is my most epic failure, was I walked away and then I was like, wait, did I fail on my own on that? Like, what is it that, because we don't make art by ourselves, our experiences and the environment, everything sort of bleeds into the work that we do. And I was like, what is mine and what is, and what was aided? And I realized that I had done enough of the actual book work, but what I had not done was the preparation of Karen. You know, I hadn't done enough of my own sort of self worth work.
Yeah, like on your deserve levels and
Yeah.
And I also I'd surrounded myself with people who were trying to take rather than give. And so it really sort of it opened my eyes to some relationships that I needed to end, and things that I needed to not let happen again for me to actually make art.
How long ago was this, Karen?
Oh, right after I just won the Tony, I think. So in 2000.
But right before you decided to move to the Midwest. That is one of the most harrowing stories I have ever heard. To have that lightning strike you as you open your mouth to sing an entire evening of music at Carnegie Hall. I can I'm imagining what was happening in your body was a dose of adrenaline and a dose of cortisol, which feels like green poison to me. Right. Holy fucking shit.
Did it feel like the evening was in slow motion, like it couldn't go fast enough?
It was like
how
a
did
5-hour concert.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Oh no!
With a costume change, mind you.
Sure, it's Carnegie Hall. You got a costume change.
Yeah.
How did you heal from that?
Well, I was thrust under the blanket of shame for quite some time, and I vowed to never do a concert again. And I just sort of, luckily I had a show that I knew very well that I could go back to. Because, I mean, something like that can really sort of turn you off of live performing forever.
Yeah.
But luckily I had that in my back pocket, that I knew what I was doing when I would step on the stage in West Side Story.
Yep.
Repetition.
Truthfully, I don't think that I'm completely over it. Like, I can't listen to recordings of it because I am thrust into a sense memory in such a way that my body starts to shake and I start to sweat.
That makes sense to me, because what you're describing, and Cams, have you experienced something? I know I have, but have you experienced something like that before? I don't think we've ever talked about it.
Not on the level of Carnegie Hall, but yes.
Well, but it doesn't have to be Carnegie Hall.
Yeah. But for sure, that's
Carnegie
how I knew
Hall.
the time slowed
It's
down.
always Carnegie Hall, baby.
No, I think that's why I'm like laughing / crying through it, because all of it felt so real. And that's why I asked the question about time, because I'm like, why do I suspect time slowed way down? And it was like, I can't get through this fast enough because it's miserable. What I'm feeling is misery and I just want it to end. But yes, I have had those experiences. I mean, luckily not many, but yeah.
Yeah, those experiences that I have had have been so career changing that I'm impressed and I'm proud of you, Karen, because you continue to make your living doing this. There's also something about, and I don't know if this played into your experience, a one night only shot out of a cannon.
Yeah. Is there any part of you that wants, like, could I have a do-over at some point? Or maybe I would want to do a concert at some point. Just wondering.
I guess that there, maybe early on, I was like, I have to sort of like tick that box.
Get back on the horse.
Yeah.
But what I have known about myself since that is that when I perform in that concert sort of arena, I don't find enjoyment in it. And so
fuck that shit.
That's it.
So
you don't
I'm
need
like,
it.
I'm not going back
That
in
doesn't
there.
have to be in your creative portfolio. Fuck
Yeah.
that shit.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, if there's anything to take away, it's that, like, if you're not enjoying it, what is that? Like, basically, fuck that voice that's like, you have to be good at every single type of performance if you're a performer. And no, you don't. You don't have to enjoy every type. You can actually just focus on the ones that bring you, joy and happiness, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Karen, I never knew that story. That chills me to the bone, and I feel you so deeply. You've been in this creativity business for a good long while. Do you have some good creative advice for us and for our listeners?
You know what? I was going to say no, and then I just realized as I look at my studio, I have so many different things that I'm not really good at in the art world. Like I'm really, really bad at like watercolor, and I'm pretty good with charcoal. And when it comes to crafty stuff, I can do this or I can do that. But what I think has been really helpful for me is that I'm really good at one thing, which I know is performing live. But I keep sort of injecting other forms just to sort of like maintain humility and to also keep my brain in that like that student place.
Yes.
How do I do
growth
this?
mindset. Yes.
So I would say just keep doing that. And also like the failures. I mean, that Carnegie Hall story it's horrifying, but like I wouldn't change it because I learned more in that moment. And so every time I pick something up and I'm shit at it, I'm like, good, okay, cool, okay. So we can spend a couple more hours trying to do this right, or you can just know that you're just not good at that.
It's similar though to what you said about like sitting in the uncomfortability of something, and learning a new skill is often like that's the barrier to entry. People will feel, I don't like how I feel uncomfortable because I don't know what I'm doing. And being okay with that for a while is actually what allows you to learn new skills.
It's a really good time to be comfortable with discomfort. And to have to sit. It is because we are all, if you are a thinking, feeling person right now, your homework assignment. Like we all have a lot of work to do, and a lot of that work is really going to be uncomfortable. But if there's something you're describing reminds me of that growth mindset and wrapping your arms around it, because it's going to be the thing, no matter what your age is, that's going to continue to allow us to make our lives better and make our worlds better.
Karen, you do so much. Can you tell us what's it all for?
I really do have this sort of, I wouldn't call myself like a positive person for sure, but,
Really?
no, truthfully,
Really?
no. Yeah. No, but there is something about creating art to me that is a lot like creating life. And I feel like when I make it, I've somehow made the world better. So I keep doing it because it's the only thing that really sort of keeps me grounded in this. This is going to sound weird, but like this cosmic framework. I feel like I'm definitely a part of that other thing if I keep putting it out into the world.
That's a good what's it all for.
I like it.
Finally, what or who is sparking you these days?
I'm going to be honest with you. My daughter is actually really inspiring me.
Oh,
She is 16 and has, it's as if she is not an overprivileged kid from the Midwest. She is understanding and trying to understand concepts that are so far beyond her age. She is like, she's more of an activist than I am, you know? And that is not something that I would have expected from her upbringing or from where she's been or who she's been involved with, you know? And so it's sort of her tenacity and her willingness to say the uncomfortable stuff and to learn that is giving me such inspiration and hope in this moment.
That's incredible.
What is her name?
Her name's Madison Uphoff.
Thanks, Madison. That sparks me too.
Karen, thank you so much for being our guest.
We love you, Karen.
So thrilled to have you.
I'm still stuck on that you don't think you're a positive person, which you can say that. But I always think whenever I get any time with you, I always leave the situation feeling better for it. So it just surprises me to hear you say that.
But I think that's a reflection of you. Truthfully, you're like a party, man. You really do.
Karen.
I'm for real.
I'm a tired old party.
Look, yeah, but it's a good party. Sorry.
Thanks, Karen. I feel the same way about you. We do. We love you.
Karen.
And listeners, we do hope that this put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen to us. If there's a spark that you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and you've fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, we want to celebrate you. Please email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you have to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
And be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast wherever you get your podcast. If you like this podcast, we hope you'll share it with people that you love. And if you didn't like it, I don't know, Karen, what do you say to your critics?
Oh, man, I don't really worry about them because they don't know me.
There you go. There you go.
If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that's been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
Take some clay and throw and glaze it. Take some text and musically phrase it. You have a choice. You have a voice, and we hope to God you will raise it.
You gotta take it and make it.
Oh my God.
We love you, Karen Olivo.
We love you
guys.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.